Hey everybody, welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, have you ever worked in a kitchen?
I have many years.
Yeah?
Oh, yes.
How
I got
was that?
lots of experience.
Yeah.
It was good. I mean, it got my way through college, you know.
Yeah.
I'm well versed. Well, okay, this was 25 years ago, but I'm
Right,
well versed in the kitchen.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
I did not. I never did the
Everybody should work.
I did retail, but I didn't do anything food related.
Okay, well, that's fair. Everybody
In
needs to work
hospitality.
in hospitality or retail. At least
I
once in their
agree.
life.
Yes, I agree. I think that's
Yeah.
an important foundation. But I do love to cook. You know,
Yes.
We've established that. I enjoy cooking, but now that's just for like a family of three. I'm going to be honest. My cooking's mostly for two because my son still is
Yeah.
at that point where he
No,
doesn't.
he doesn't.
He doesn't want anything that we cook. Like,
No, yeah.
unless it's like hamburgers or pork chops. He's okay with that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so it's mostly just for me and my wife. So.
Right.
Now, so that's nothing like a real kitchen, I'm sure. You know, that's nothing
Oh,
like
no.
the
Yes.
high stakes, high stress, lots of
Yes.
movement, lots of
Yes.
stuff going on,
Yes.
heat and just manic energy, stuff spilling.
Yes. It is very much a team environment. Though.
Yeah,
Yes.
Well, the reason why I bring it up is because
Yeah.
we're talking a little bit about the kitchen today. We're talking about the place the technology has in the kitchen.
Yes.
What kinds of technology? In particular, we're going to be talking about thermal printing in the kitchen because there's a little debate over whether that's
Sure.
viable back of the house in the
Absolutely.
kitchen environment.
Yep.
We've got John Maieli with us today from Star Micronics.
Yep.
He's going to help us kind of talk a little bit about the state of the industry of kitchens and restaurants and hospitality, what's going on there. We're going to talk about printers in the kitchen, what their function is and their purpose. We're going to get into the whole thermal versus impact debate.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
Hint, we're leaning, if you didn't notice from the title of this episode, we're leaning thermal. We're going to explain why.
So we get to vote at the
whether
end.
it's the plate. No, there's no voting.
Okay, there's no voting.
This isn't a democracy. Come on. It's a dictatorship.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get a little myth busting. He's going to help us,
Oh.
explain, some of the objections
Like
and the
it.
pain points that people say, like, no, here's why you can't possibly do this.
Right.
He'll help us overcome some of that stuff. And then obviously give some tips to our VARs about how they can go out to their customers and maybe move them on to thermal printing from where they are now.
This is awesome.
There you go. All right.
Good.
Hey, I'm glad you're in because you got to do this with me. You can't just wander off.
Yeah, no wandering.
All that plus our usual value to the VAR and what's tech connecting with us. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, our guest today is John Maieli. He is a channel partner executive for Star Micronics, and more importantly, he knows a thing or two about this whole kitchen environment. He's got some background there,
okay.
just like you. So,
Uh-huh.
John, tell us a little bit more about yourself, your day-to-day life at Star, and again, your background in the kitchen to kind of lend some credibility to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, John and Dean. Right now with Star Micronics, I focus with our distribution partners. But I've only been with Star about a year and spent half my life in kitchens, ranging from bakeries, fine dining, country clubs, large hotels and resorts. So I'm really excited for this conversation with you guys today.
Man, he's got a little bit more experience than I do. I worked in a pizzeria for like 6-7 years.
Right.
Yeah.
You were just back there just tossing some
I
dough
was,
around.
but I was around when this started, because
Yeah.
I mean, I saw going from a ticket, like literally
right,
writing
like an
out,
actual
oh,
handwritten
you want a
ticket.
large
Yeah.
pepperoni and
Yeah,
onion, just
right.
writing that out. I don't know why
Why
I needed
did
the
you do
Italian accent there, but to full like printers in the background.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you just the whole time did you work there?
Oh,
you just walk
yes.
around with the
Where's
accent?
La
on stuff?
Rosas? Yes.
Good grief. All right. Well, John, let's bring this back to a serious note here for a moment. Let's talk about the state of the industry. What are we looking at in kitchens right now in retail or in restaurant and hospitality? Like what is that world like for them? Especially I imagine in this, as things have changed over the last few years and we've ramped up all these operations with, pickup and delivery and ghost kitchens and all this stuff. So help us understand what's happening in kitchens right now.
Well, restaurants are busy. The National Restaurant Association, they're projecting, I think, around $900 billion this year. And the industry is navigating its way through the worst pandemic in generations. Restaurant operators, they're facing ever-changing conditions, challenging their business. We're still seeing, some limited seating capacity, but not due to regulations anymore, due to labor. The pandemic, it reshaped operations, workforce, menus, technology. food and labor and occupancy costs are rising. How high are they going to rise? When are they going to level off? Operators are experiencing supply delays or shortages, just like we are in our industry. And that's most likely going to continue. And, the professionals who I'm in touch with still, they're talking recruitment, retention, and training as their, largest issues right now that they're facing.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
I mean, you're right. It's kind of all of us are in that same
Right,
bucket,
right.
if you will, as it relates to that. But let's kind of get on the busy front. I think that we've experienced some unique things that have happened in the restaurant kitchen area, especially since the pandemic. When you get into kitchens, and John, I don't know that this probably ever happened. Maybe it did when you were in the hospitality industry, but the idea of ghost kitchens, or like having a kitchen that is multifaceted, not just operating as a part of whatever the front of house might be, but they're also doing other orders that are being picked up and things of this nature. I mean, just think about how revolutionary that is. I mean, I can think back to when I was in a kitchen. That would have been like, we're making pizzas all day long, and now all of a sudden I got an order for a burger or something like that. It's like, what? Yeah, I do have a grill. I guess I could make that type of thing. So, they're busy. Operators are being asked to do unique things, and that's kind of manifesting itself in some of the technology that's in the back of the house, in the way that these commercial kitchens are even being built, what they're being utilized for. So, there's a lot more focus coming on. I mean, they're getting to be smaller spaces. When you think about a trend right where you are, John, since labor is so hard to get, a lot of these restaurants now are like completely getting rid of dine-in. They don't have the staff to deal with people coming in and wanting to sit down. So it's all going either drive-through or delivery or pickup, right?
Yep.
And so that has a different impact on things. And now the kitchens are getting a little bit smaller, need to be a little bit more efficient, things of that nature. So, a lot of stuff, in my estimation, is happening in hospitality.
Well, and I would think like the speed factor too has to be a big part of it.
Really good
Everything's
point.
fast. Let's get it out, get it
100%.
moving, get it out there quickly.
Yep.
We just had Luke Wilwarding on a couple weeks ago talking about, the self-service, and he mentioned this idea that like people aren't getting any less patient, or any more patient rather, like patience is at an all-time, low.
Yep.
People want everything as quickly as possible. And again, in these kitchen environments where they were already, from my understanding, very high, fast-paced, high intensity, get stuff in and out, as quickly as possible. You don't want a customer to be sitting and waiting for any longer than they have to for food. And then on top of that, you may potentially are also saying, oh, and by the way, there's going to be like 6 or 7 delivery drivers coming through every hour, picking up stuff that we need to have ready to go and on its way as soon as possible too. Like, man, the pressures that has to be just kind of through the roof right now.
Absolutely. John, give us a little bit of your insight. You spent a lot of time there. I mean, let's just kind of get into the mind, if you will, of the kitchen worker. I can remember being as highly efficient as I possibly could. That was part of the game, right? When you think about a modern kitchen.
Yeah, it's all about efficiency, and it always has been, but even more so as we struggle with labor. What can I do with less, right? And still keeping that product high quality and consistent. I know you mentioned nobody wanting to wait for food, and as cooks and chefs, we also see it from the end user point of view as well. And nobody wants to wait a long time for food, and that's one of the biggest motivating factors, to push that food out even quicker.
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, okay, so then let's talk technology, because obviously whenever we talk about labor issues or efficiency, or productivity, we talk about how technology can help enable that.
Yep.
And in the kitchen in particular, let's talk about the printer side of things here. So first, let's just get very basic here for anybody who doesn't, necessarily work in this environment or know much about what happens back of house. Where do printers fit in? What's going on with them in the back of the house? What are the staff back there using printers for right now?
So we use printers for everything, everything from coursing out meals to knowing what a customer ordered, what modifiers they may want. You see it in use from the bar side as well. They're just easy, straightforward. You could walk into any restaurant and pick it up. I mean, you learn the flow of the kitchen. You don't need to learn a software per se. The ticket comes out and you make what's on it.
So it sounds like, again, the whole efficiency and productivity side of it is
Yeah.
a critical factor there of what you're going to need to have when you have a printer in the kitchen.
But I think that what's important, at least what I witnessed, kind of going through some iterations, and what I witness when I go and see commercial.
Did you start off with like a dot matrix printer or something? Like,
worse than that? Again, and I'll spare you the Italian accent this time around. But no, seriously, we had the tickets, right? And so there were different stations, but the ticket had the duplication on it. So even though the person taking the order had the original on the top, there were 2 or 3 duplicates under it, and those would go to the various stations, right? If we had a pasta station or something like that. So, obviously in the print environment, when you think about print environment in a kitchen today, what it has enabled is the ability to put these printers in different stations. Even food expediters. I think where John was going there, if you're the grill, you're just getting out what's coming on the grill. If you're in the pasta station, you're getting what's going on there. And so you can be very deliberate about who's getting what order and when, type of a thing. Even such things as messaging on there about when to drop your stuff. For example, if your whatever station you're on doesn't take quite as long as some other things that are being prepared, then you need to wait a little bit or stuff like that. So it can get fairly sophisticated on actually what is printed on it. But anyway, kind of going back to the placement of it, I saw that as being a real advantage. Now, instead of having to walk people all the way up to the front of the house, grab tickets off of the spindle or whatever,
or the slide lines,
they're printing off right where I am. And it's just like boom, boom, boom. It's happening, really fast.
That's awesome. All right.
Yeah,
that
that's where you're starting to see, I think, some of the difference there.
Yeah, I like this little, like insight in the back of the house. You see everything from the front. We talk so much about, I think, point of sale and
because I used to be that runner.
There,
I used to, if you're a junior staff in the back, you're the goat. You're the guy
grunt,
you're the grunt. Yeah, thank you. You're the guy who's running around getting all the tickets and bringing them back to the head chefs and stuff like that. That's not where you want to be.
No, not at all. And plus you could have been used to something better effect too. Like that's a waste of your time and efficiency there.
Yeah, like cleaning pans or something.
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
Right.
All right, well, John, let's get into the big debate here then, which is the idea of impact versus thermal printing. So first of all, help us explain the key differences between those two types of printing, and make the use case for us for thermal over impact in the kitchen, and the unique capabilities that it brings to the back of the house.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that we've done well as an industry is to simplify complex technology like dot matrix printing, and delivering that to the restaurant and hospitality market with a simple term, kitchen printer, right? Everywhere you look, impact printers are being sold as kitchen printers. Impact printers or dot matrix printers, they have a series of pins that form the shape of the characters. These pins strike against the ribbon and transfer the ink onto a single or multi-layered paper. So in contrast, a thermal printer produces a printed image by selectively heating thermal paper as the paper passes by the thermal print head. And the paper is heat sensitive, so the coating turns black in areas where it's heated, thus producing the required image, clear, fast printing, also with the ability to print barcodes and QR codes. So I support a hybrid system consisting of printers and kitchen display systems. I don't believe that a KDS replaces a printer. In my experience, the most successful small and medium-sized businesses, used both together. I often printed from a KDS, for allergy updates, seat changes. Larger parties were easier to kind of handle on paper. Or something interesting that caught my eye that I wanted to check back on later. And, I had that paper that reminder in my hand, or it's mobile. I could walk it down to a cook that I wanted to, clarify, hey, this is a really serious, gluten allergy, make sure it's fresh pan, fresh spatula, right? And, also the printers were there as a source of quick paper, so not in service, but in production. If I was working on a new plate and I thought it would go well with a certain ice cream, let's say, that I already had a formula for, but I didn't want to make 6 gallons, to taste the one plate. So I would be able to modify the recipe by hand and have a little, go and hit the feed button, print out a little bit of paper and, make my modifications so that I could make a smaller batch.
Really interesting on the angle on the KDS. So that's a little bit before my world, but I understand it totally how that maybe has kind of come into and taken some of the print need away. But your point is valid because I was putting myself back in my situation. You always needed something printed to put on the box or the bag. Obviously in a pizzeria you're doing a lot of that.
Right.
But even an expediter or whatever in a restaurant, some plates look the same. No, this one's supposed to go to this table, and there might be some modification to it or something like that. So there's definitely a need for that type of print technology back there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely. Yeah, I know I was reading on one of Star Micronics blogs about thermal printers and versus impact in the kitchen, like really kind of breaking down the differences. And a couple of things that I pointed out, key benefits, the speed for one thing, that's much faster, obviously, to print on thermal. The lack of ribbons, which means one less thing that you have to change out, one less thing that can break, one less thing that
gets gummed up.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, we talked about earlier the kitchen environment. It's hot, it's sticky back there. Like
lots of grease flying around.
Yeah, exactly. And I know and you'll probably speak to this a little bit more later, John. That Star makes printers that in particular are designed to handle that kind of environment in the kitchen where the heat and the mess is not as much of a concern. And then also the less noise factor, which wasn't one that I really thought was like, okay, but in the kitchen, do you care about the noise? But I understand, again, if you're in a fine dining establishment somewhere that, you want minimal amounts of noise, or you need to be able to hear other things that are going on. You don't want to have the constant, whirring and, purring, I guess, of the printer. So maybe speak to some of that too, John. Like, how, like, when you're talking to someone about these environments and they're saying, hey, it's a hot, crazy, kitchen environment back here. How does those factors as part of thermal really kind of help step them away from what they're using with impact?
Yeah, well, that's one of the myths that I hear all the time. Right, temperature. So we know that thermal paper is affected by temperature, but modern kitchens are climate controlled, right? And so yeah, the grill station may be really hot, but so is a grill when you're outside barbecuing, you're standing over it, right? There's intense heat right there. But, here in Miami, I'm in Miami, Florida. If I forget a receipt in my car, in a 100-degree day, when I go in the next day or 2 days later, it hasn't been affected. So, we're seeing temperature in extreme cases, maybe a pizza place where they're putting the ticket on top of the box, on top of the pizza oven. We may see some changes there, but in a modern kitchen, or if you can kind of move your printer away from the heat lamp as you're modifying your kitchen to accommodate this, you're not going to see any issues with temperature there. As far as sound goes, sound is one of the biggest reasons why people support impact printing in the kitchen. And for me, the printer, the tickets, that's the heart of the restaurant. So if you need sound to tell you to go check the ticket machine, you're probably not serving that much food, and might not have the best future there. One area where I do think sound plays a part is like in country clubs that are private membership, and so they may not do that many orders for lunch, and you may have a private banquet going on, and there we have sound devices for our thermal printers as well. So it's just kind of a myth with thermal that there's no sound. Multiple colors is another one. People like to have the red and the black to identify what modifiers there are. But that can be done with thermal printing as well through inverse printing or bold font. When you think about third-party delivery and these other things that we spoke about that are really impacting the industry right now, all of the third-party delivery companies, they're all integrated with thermal. We're seeing linerless labels being used. And again, this is thermal printing technology there as well.
I'm going to give you a use case, the bar. Right? No. Like if you have a bar, the last thing you want is think like, receipt kind of coming out. It's
somebody's trying to have a private conversation.
Yeah.
Printer
and this
next
thing's
to
like going
off.
mad with all the
right.
I've seen those, and it was much better when it's quieter.
Right.
And thermal is just whisper.
This feels like one of those things that's a very like old school attitude. Like, look, I like the gentle whirring of the printer. I like knowing that it's there. Like, the sounds you just get accustomed to.
Right.
I guess it could be the equivalent of somebody like saying like, well, I don't want to go to an electric vehicle because I like hearing the engine noise.
That's
you know,
right.
like I mean, I guess like I get it, but at the same time, it's not really necessary.
I even lived through the first iteration of those dot matrix impact printers because we had, when they first came out, there were two receipts, if you will, on the spool.
Right.
So it was printing the one and it was in whatever, creating the duplicate behind it. But in today's world, that's mitigated because you can put the printers around and things of that nature. And obviously, if you get into the whole wireless capabilities as well, now all you really need is a plug, and you can move these things around.
Right.
As I talked about in kind of the beginning, a lot of these kitchens are being asked to be more modular and flexible in nature. What today might be a pasta station, tomorrow might be something different.
Right.
So it needs to have the flexibility. And so, the print technology that is enabling that is back of house is going to be these types of things.
Definitely.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, John, talk to us a little bit maybe about the component part of it too, because I understand that's a big difference also, as thermal printers just don't have quite as many moving parts, as many components that have to be changed out. I mentioned that, the ribbon is not an issue necessarily there. So I have to think too, like if you're in the kitchen and your printer suddenly runs out of paper, or the ink runs dry, or ribbon snaps, or something like something happens, that's just that much more of a headache to have to change stuff out. But on thermal, that gets a lot easier, right?
Yeah, and so the thermal heads last longer than the ink ribbons, right? And so you're going to make it through a service without having to replace a thermal head. You're going to make it through many, many services without having to replace a thermal head. And anytime there's moving parts, there's more chances for breaking. And so we deal with people using ribbons that aren't recommended for our printers, and it breaks off into the spindle. And then there's some work that has to be done there. But what Star has really done with our M collection is made a perfect alternative printing solution for the kitchens, right? And again, it's not taking the place of a dot matrix impact printer, but what it's doing is it's offering a perfectly viable alternative. And they've replaced the electric components from the bottom to the top, so it's a little bit more spill proof and splash resistant. They've insulated the bottom with foam to seal it. And the paper comes out from the front instead of the top. So again, you have some splash resistance there. So a lot of thought and technology went into making this alternative kitchen solution.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely.
Make it even easier.
Exactly. When I was reading, I think it was on that same article, and I'll put the link to this in the show notes, was kind of talking about the MC Print 3 in particular, and noted some of the special features, and the wireless connectivity was a big part of it, which again, you can put that printer wherever you want. Just got to be able to plug it in somewhere. The splash proof aspect, insect proof, which you don't want to think about insects in the kitchen, but it's not like they don't happen. So, and again, you don't want to bug crawling up into your printer and jamming it up.
Yeah.
And then the other one too, which was one of these things that I didn't think about until I thought about it, and I was like, well, duh, which was print flat. This idea of you print something out and the receipt actually comes out and stays flat. It doesn't curl up.
Oh,
because I know that even from my retail days, if you needed to use a receipt for some reason, you need to look at something, and if it's all curling over itself and spinning back, it's just drive you nuts. And I have to imagine in a kitchen environment where you literally need to be reading that on a regular basis.
Oh, it's a nightmare
to stay as flat as possible. That's a huge piece of technology to have there. So
because I can remember trying to read the little up under the it's a nightmare. You'd have to try to thin it out.
Exactly.
On the older impact printers, not ideal.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, for VARs that are interested in learning a little bit more about how they can go to their customers and maybe sell them on thermal and making that transition, we'll talk about that in just a moment.
Okay.
But first, as always, I want to thank our TEConnect sponsors and members, of which Star is one. Thank you so much for supporting our podcast. We appreciate the support you give us, our TEConnect program, lending us folks like John to come on here and talk about these topics. Hey, if you like the show, let us know. People will sometimes, occasionally, if I'm out somewhere, come up and tell me.
Oh, yeah, they'll say, hey, great job.
And by occasionally, I mean when I'm at VARTech,
But what we really need them to do is to say that in the, right?
Exactly. We need you to tell us that in other ways. Like if you're listening on a podcaster that has an option for ratings and reviews, leave us a rating and review. If you're an Apple podcast in particular, leave a 5-star rating and review. Tell us what you think about the show, what you like about it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment.
Yep.
Seriously, it just takes a couple seconds. Just go down there and type in a comment, even if it's just,
we will
hey,
answer
great
you back.
pod, guys.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's fine, Or if, like, hey, man, that John guy, he seems to know what he's talking about, like, not this one, the one we're talking to.
Yeah.
I probably don't. If they were leaving the comments for me, be like, that John Martin doesn't seem like he knows any of what he's talking about. You try doing a podcast on 60,000 different topics a year. Man, I'm getting out some aggression here.
Yeah, really.
And of course, if you have ideas for the show, things you want us to talk about, topics, we're already starting to gear up for a new year soon.
That's
we're starting
right.
We're planning out our last episodes for this year. I'm already starting to think ahead to next year.
Yep. What do we need to talk about?
Yeah,
What's on the
I want to know, what do you guys want out of this podcast? If you're listening on a regular basis, or maybe you listen to a few episodes here and there because they're not all quite to your liking, tell us what you want. What topics do you want to hear about? What kind of guests do you want to hear from? What kind of technology do you want us to dive into? What trends do you want us to explore? We're happy to do that stuff, but you got to tell us. There's always going to be a link in the show notes to do that. Just submit your topic there. Just for sending in an idea, we will send you a TEConnect podcast t-shirt. And if we use your idea, even better. Maybe we'll call you out and ask you for some questions in particular you want answered, and help us guide our way through the episode.
There you go.
I'm not asking you to do the work for me, but give us a little direction at least. So
fair enough.
And as always, if you want to stay in touch with us and keep connected with us, you can always find us on Twitter at TEConnectPod. You can also email us TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap things up here. First of all, with our value to the VAR and our takeaway for our VARs today. So, John, I want you to help us out here. How do you and Star advise VARs approach their existing customers, or even brand new customers that they're just reaching out to for the first time, or maybe a new restaurant, new hospitality environment that's opening up, to help them understand how to opt into thermal print for their operations? What is that conversation like? Maybe separate that in the two stacks there. What should they talk about to existing customers that are still on the impact and are throwing out these objections and just don't think thermal is right for them? And then for new customers that are getting started up, they're trying to help out and make that pitch to thermal for them too.
Yeah, well, I think when we look at the availability, right, and the availability of dot matrix printers right now really led us to ask the question, why? Why aren't we seeing thermal being more readily available in kitchens, here in the United States? And what I think, first and foremost, the VARs have to understand the needs of their customers. When I came on board here at Star and I heard the myths, I knew there was an opportunity here, right? Restaurants, cafes, coffee shops, delis, bars, bakeries, juice bars, food trucks, and so on. What's the application that they need, and are they open to new technologies? And I think almost all hospitality and restaurant businesses right now they're using some sort of thermal self-service, figuring out what your customers are doing for self-service. And, if you're uncomfortable with the conversation, ask for Star. We're always here for support. Whether myself, your account rep, our integrations department, we're always available to engage in those conversations and, to show the opportunities here for thermal in the kitchen.
Yeah. I think we tapped on it a little bit earlier in the sense that a lot of these software companies are going towards, integrating with thermal. It's kind of the way where the industry is going. So you need to be a part of that, obviously, and have that talk track down so that you can engage and have people in there. Secondarily, I would take a demo unit because it sells itself. Yeah. You just show that all you have to do is drop in new paper and boom, you're up and running.
Yep.
I mean, it's really nice to demo one of these, compared to what they might have today, the whole ribbon thing and the gumminess of the impact and things of that nature. It just show how nice, clean, and easy and efficient a thermal runs.
Right.
It'll sell itself in that environment.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
make sure you have a demo in your pocket as you're going in there.
Yep. It's a little bit of that consultative selling there again of understanding their environment. Again, if you've got someone like a John on your staff, or if you can get John himself, sure. Like anybody who's ever worked in that kitchen environment is probably going to know some of the horror stories about what it's like and what it is back of the house.
And demystify or demythify.
Exactly. So maybe they could go in there and have a conversation with you and your customer about like, well, hey, seriously, what are you dealing with right now? Like what's your, isn't this a pain in the butt when that happens? Like, hey, I see your printer over there. It looks like, it's this kind. Don't you hate it when XYZ happens? Yeah. And to John's other point also, where you mentioned like the idea that front of house, there's a good chance that in the front of the house in a lot of these establishments, they're already using thermal in some way, whether it's part of their point of sale, whether they're doing some kind of maybe thermal labeling in some way, thermal print labeling. There's a good chance they're already using thermal somewhere else. And I think if you can help make that connection and realize like, hey, you're already doing this here. Have you noticed how much smoother and easier that is? How much less money and time you waste on changing things out and fixing it? And, so why wouldn't you bring that to the back? And most likely at that point, that's when you start getting into, I would assume, into those like more of like the objection conversation that, again, hopefully we've equipped you with overcoming those objections.
For sure.
Too.
For sure. Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. John, anything else to add on that as far as, going out and reaching out to customers?
Well, I think you said it best. Offer a demo unit, right? The proof is seeing it, right? Because again, these myths have been around this industry for so long, and I hear the same objections, coming up over and over again. And I think that here, when you work with it, when you see the speed of the print, I think it really working with it helps you overcome those objections.
There you go.
We didn't get into it, but the younger people that are usually working in hospitality, what do they want to work with?
Yeah,
this thing in the background. It's like
that's a great point. If you can have a few of them on your side, or the ones,
hold on,
find out which one of those can influence a decision maker. That can be like, hey, this stuff we're using is just ancient, right? Come on,
yeah,
get with the times, Gramps. I'm assuming that's how they talk.
Get that
in a pizzeria, they
paper.
use the Italian accent, though. Get with the times, Gramps.
Yes.
We've just lost all of our Italian listeners. I don't know if we have any, but they've probably just unsubscribed and just blocking us on all channels now.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's wrap things up with what's TEConnecting with you. This is our favorite part of the show where we get to talk about anything we want from the world of science, tech, innovation, whatever's got our attention right now. John, I'll let you kick off here. What's TEConnecting with you right now?
So I'm going to keep it in the food scene, 3D printing in food. So I remember seeing this a couple of years ago, but with chocolate, and it totally made sense to me because chocolate is similar to like what's commonly 3D printed, where it can get soft and it can harden. And I remember seeing these like super intricate chocolate decorations, and I was really intrigued. And then it kind of moved into also like inkjet printing on coffee cream and beer foam and cookies and lasers capable of cutting and engraving food. But now I'm seeing total 3D robots where you like text that you want a hamburger, and they're like printing food, whether it's plant-based or alternative protein, but it's connecting with me right now.
It is a little weird to see. We've talked about that a little bit on the show before, right? Like chicken nuggets that are like printed, 3D
like
printed.
Impossible nuggets and type stuff like that.
Everybody who has a kid knows that when you go to the school, like whatever lunchroom, you can get chicken in just about any shape possible. Pretzel, whatever. Yeah. So, but 3D printing of food is a thing. It's a thing. It's interesting.
I'm fascinated by this too. I worked in food service, like equipment industry before I came to BlueStar, and one of the things that we sold were like the molds for purees. So like, and that's typically in hospice and in healthcare environments where you might have patients that for one reason or another can't eat solid food or can't chew food very well. So, they offered up these like puree molds where like you made, you basically blend up some food and protein or whatever. And then you're just kind of dumping into a mold that sort of shapes it into what's supposed to look like normal food. Like this looks like a pork chop, and it's, it's a pork chop puree that's like with a little food coloring and a mold that makes it look like a pork chop as long as it's sitting static on the plate. But then as soon as you cut into it,
it falls apart.
The myth gets dispelled really easily.
Yeah, right.
I would think 3D printing would be like the next iteration of that, where you can.
I see. Yeah, right.
Legitimate. Again, it's the presence and appearance thing, and we all know people eat with their eyes.
Yep.
And even though someone might be eating something they know is not the real deal food, the fact that they can eat something and get something put on their plate in front of them that tangibly at least looks close enough like it, maybe even feels enough like it, and I think that 3D printing for food is going to help us kind of get there to that point.
Yeah,
so
could be. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. What's TEConnecting with you right now?
Do you like China as a close neighbor? How would you feel about that? Like
as the country,
close neighbor to us? Yes.
I mean,
like really close.
But could be a little problematic if I don't want them in my backyard.
How about this word, Amasia? Does that word? It's a
Like
new
America
word.
plus Asia?
Yes. Okay. So supercomputer simulations suggest that Earth's next supercontinent will be formed within 200 million years.
Like literally next door.
Literally, as the Pacific Ocean closes, connecting Asia and North America and South America into a supercontinent.
So we're getting back to like Pangea days again.
Yes. Yeah. So if you and I happen to be lucky enough to, whatever, we find the fountain of youth and we're around 200 million years from now,
that just sounds awful.
it would be Amasia. And, like China would literally be like smashed right into us. Anyway, I thought that was fascinating. Obviously with supercomputer simulations, you can see, but they're using the tectonic plates and how that. So apparently we're all going to be, we better start getting along.
So the continental drift hasn't changed. Yeah.
No. Yeah. We better start getting along because we're all going to be like, not just neighbors, but like really neighbors.
Like really neighbors. Yeah. Man, that's going to kill some people with some beachfront property in California.
I know, right? And I don't know what happens to Japan and all that. Smash.
Hopefully it gets to just slip into the middle and not get squished up in there. So, all right.
What's TEConnecting with you? There you go.
So I was struggling today to figure out my TEConnecting. And then as I was like trying to type up some ideas, my little icon popped in the corner of my screen with a big G for Grammarly.
Oh, yes.
So I thought, hey, I think I've mentioned this maybe briefly on the show, but I want to talk a little bit more about Grammarly. So I'm a writer by nature. I've been writing since I was very young. That's like my end with marketing was like I just love to write. I've always been fairly good at writing. But, when this idea of Grammarly came along, I think James Cordy introduced me to it and recommended, hey, you should sign up for this. I'm like, really?
And you were like, I don't need that.
I don't need some program telling me how to write. Come on. Well, I find myself using it a lot. And it's not
you
like,
sold me on it, and I use it a ton.
There you go. And it's not so much that it's like out there, like, correcting everything I'm writing, like I'm just botching stuff left and right.
Right.
One, it's helped me streamline my writing, which is, I think, always good, especially if you're in marketing or you do a lot of communications, a lot of emails.
Yep.
I'm a wordy person.
Yep. So
cut those somehow words. You didn't notice, So the idea of being able to cut down, on a message where it tells me like, hey, you can take these couple words out, say the exact same thing with a few words less.
Yes.
Great for if you are trying to make some kind of word count, or keep things brief, or you're trying to shorten up a message. So it's very helpful with that. It's helpful.
I think it's brilliant at that. I've used it a couple.
Really
I have the free version. Do you have a paid version?
Yes.
Okay, I have the free version, and even the free version, it will. Yeah, because apparently I get a little wordy on some of my sentences, and it'll completely rewrite it.
Right.
And I'm like, dang, that sounds a lot better.
Usually you used
more
to
concise.
send that stuff to me to do it for you. Now Grammarly can do it for you.
You've been automated.
But I still want my job, right?
Yeah, right. You still got your job. No, but seriously, it's a great tool.
It really is. I'm very impressed. And yes, to your point, there are free tiers. The paid tier is not super expensive either, but like you get all kinds of nice tools. And again, the idea is just if you're someone who writes on a semi-regular basis and you want a little more clarity, and just simple mistakes too,
emails,
just not missing a punctuation, not missing double the stuff that like word check doesn't normally pick up. Like maybe you didn't misspell a word, but you used the word twice back to back.
Oh, absolutely.
Words, like spell check sometimes doesn't catch that stuff. This will catch that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
too.
no. I don't know, John, if you have that issue. Like where I find it catching me a lot is like missing those ghost words that you read into your sentence, like a lot of thes that I drop.
Exactly.
And I thought that it was in there, but it's not in there.
Yep.
So when you go back and reread it, it's like, oh, this sounds like terrible. Yeah. Of course I need a the there or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, it's a good tool.
Hard recommend Grammarly if you do any kind of writing at all. It'd be very useful. So.
Or if not, it just operates in the background. It's a pretty good one. That's a good
exactly. And by the way, if you're someone who does like shorthand stuff sometimes where you don't want it, like if you're doing like a lot of social media stuff, like Twitter, like places where you don't want it to judge every single thing you're writing, you can turn it off of certain applications if you need to. So you could decide like, all right, I don't want it for
Twitter,
this particular part of my email, or or this place where I just make lists of stuff or whatever, and I don't need it to be perfectly, grammatized and perfectly, a perfect punctuation or whatever. Like you can turn that off if you need to.
Pretty cool.
It's not that overbearing. All right, that's what's TEConnecting with us today. John Maieli from Star Micronics. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
Appreciate having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And until next time, check out your word structure. Figure out what you're writing about.
Well, that way it can print less on your thermal printer that you're going to be selling.
Oh man, look at you! This is why you're a pro. You just bring it right back to the conversation.
Bring it around. There you go.
Use Grammarly for your thermal printer. That's. We'll see if we can find some kind of integration for Star to put that in there.
Bingo.
And as always, folks, please stay connected. TEConnect podcast is brought to you by Star. All right, now that we've convinced you of the merits of thermal printing in the kitchen,
Yes.
let's go back to the front of the house for a moment.
Okay,
in
yeah, let's go.
hospitality, retail, basically anywhere transactions occur.
Yep.
With Star Micronics MPOP, the industry's first hybrid POS solution combining a cash drawer and printer in one simplified and stylish system. So the MPOP is ready to integrate with the tablet of your choice, including Apple M5 certification for iOS devices on the POP 10 CI model to charge and transfer data at the same time with the same USB-C cord. So you don't
Very
have to go
nice.
out of your way there. If you got an iPad in place,
Yeah,
and
you're
you
good
just
to
want
go.
to have some of the cool, features of a cash drawer
Yeah.
and a printer,
Yeah.
bam.
Have you seen one of these things?
Yeah, they're pretty
so,
cool.
They're so efficient.
Yeah, they're efficient. They're small
Nice and
footprint.
Small footprint, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Other features include connections for peripherals like a barcode scanner, 2-inch drop-in thermal receipt printer, and a flat bill till, all in one small and sleek footprint.
Boom, there it is.
So check out the link in the show notes to learn more and see our unboxed video for the MPOP.